For whom is the first time that you use this platform, Zoom? Could you make with your hand like this if it's the first time that you use it? If you're not familiar with Zoom? Okay, that's good. That's great, indeed. Well, so as Nicola said, we're sharing right now the agenda with you, summary of the agenda that you can look on the chat on the right side of the screen. And Nicola and myself, we both are gonna be the ones facilitating this webinar, the first webinar in English for the International Community of Practice for the Municipalities in Transition project. And we're very excited. We're very excited about this moment. Well, as I've said, probably more people will jump, but let's start. First thing that we wanted to ask you is that if it's fine for you if we record this conversation, because the idea is that everything that we will share here can be shared also with other people. There's more people that share interest of being here, but for different reasons they will not be able to join us. But if it's fine for all of you, we will record the conversation. So you can use your hands. Just if it's fine for you, you can just make like that, and we can see it here. Perfect. Angela, we can see you, but also you can use the chat. And if you put OK, for example, that tell us that is fine for you. Welcome, Tom. We're just starting. So then, Nicola, you can just click to the record the conversation. Welcome, Tom. Can you hear us?
Hello, Juan. Anyone else?
Okay, now we see how your camera is moving. Well, now I think it's better, much better. Okay, so the main goal of this first webinar is that we want to reconnect with all the different cases that they were mapped at the beginning of the Municipalities and Transition project, and also to reconnect with all these people that showed interest about the project. So this is like in a way, one of the first stones of the building we are creating with this International Community of Practice. We will be also doing a webinar in Spanish tomorrow and a webinar in Portuguese on Wednesday. There's more than 70 cases that they were mapped in the project. We will be talking briefly about that later. And this is like an amazing opportunity to connect among all of us and share also a little bit about what are we doing already and which are our interests around how municipalities, civil society, public administrations can collaborate together to foster sustainability and local resilience. So during the next a little bit less than 2 hours, we will be sharing a little bit of our experiences. We will be connecting with each other. We will be explaining where's the Municipalities in Transition project at this moment. And of course, we will be presenting each other. And together also, we will be deciding, if we have time, which are the next steps for these international webinars. What worked, what liked, what do we think is I don't know, a good next step, or we will see. So this is the approach we are having here is quite experimental, and yeah, and that's what it make it so exciting. So the first thing, like we always do in the transition processes, is like to do a check-in, to do a round where we can start to see who is right now who is in this conversation right now. And the proposal Nicola and I thought is quite simple. And basically it's starting by our name, by the place. Also, if we can say with one word, which is what's our main intention of being here. And later we can have between 1 and 2 minutes, no more, because if not it's going to be too long, but between 1 and 2 minutes to explain what's our main project, the summary of our main project. Like this also we can start to learn a little bit more about that. So I'm going to start like this. I give an example. I know this is very familiar to you, but I'm going to start. So my name is Juan del Rio. I'm based in Cardedeu, very close to Barcelona. And I would say that, well, my main intention here is to build this community of practice and to learn from all of you. I work both in the Spanish Transition Hub, developing and fostering transition processes in Spain and other Spanish-speaking countries, with training, with research, with education, in different ways. And I'm one of the co-designers of the Municipalities and Transition project that started like 1.5 years ago, more or less. And one of the main parts of this project, one of the transversal areas of this project, is this community of practice that on the wider sense is right now starting. So my main role right now here is the facilitation of this webinar with Nicola, but also of the whole community of practice. So this is my brief introduction, and this is the invitation to all of you. And I'm going to pass it to somebody else, and then when that person would have finished, that person would pass to the next one. So let's continue. I'm going to pass it to Tom. The word is for you, Tom.
Thank you, Juan. It's very nice to be here. Nice to see some familiar faces I haven't seen for a little while, and some new ones too. Hi, Nicola. I'm calling in from Hebden Bridge in Yorkshire, in Northern England. And my main interest, to summarise in attending this observation, is to observe and learn in order to consider how best to support this. That's related to my main projects and interests at the moment, which is in working within ECALISA, which is a European network of community-led sustainability initiatives, including Transition Network and lots of national transition hubs, within a knowledge and learning team, which is really focusing on how best to more systematically and thoroughly support the learning processes among member initiatives and networks and across them, and making the most of the potential that comes from the interests and activities of more formal research. And that also fits with my ongoing role within the Transition Research Network, which has explored similar functions in relation to transition specifically, and at the moment we're in a long and not very hurried process of working out how that fits in with the wider context that ECALISA is now providing. One concrete suggestion that's been made through conversations with Sarah McAdam and others in Transition Network is we see if there's scope to usefully work with and support the emerging transition communities of practice, including these, and that looks like that's being explored already in terms of Pedro's input to this project, which from what I hear is working very well. So to see where we are with that, to catch up on that and see if that gives any pointers for how we might better support this emerging community of practice and learn how to engage constructively with others. So that's that's all from me. So I'll pass on to Nicola.
I'm Nicola Hillary. I'm from Transition Network. I'm their fundraiser, but I'm also the Municipalities in Transition link as well. And I live in, well, near Stroud in the UK. And my intention for being here today, I am one of the co-guardians of these communities of practice. So my intention is to co-guard you and support Juan in his facilitation and yeah, find out what happens in this first conversation. And yeah, I don't have a main project to tell you about because I'm working for Transition Network rather than working in a community. So I will pass on to Dave.
All right, thank you. I'm Dave Pollard from Bowen in Transition. That's the Transition Network we started in 2010 on Bowen Island off the west coast of British Columbia. And I'm a friend of Ben Brangwyn. And my word of intention, I guess, would be to learn as well. My interest in this project is to see if there's overlap with a current project that we're looking at here on Bowen Island, which is to try to figure out, we're working with a developer, believe it or not, to try to figure out how we can prevent the incredible growth of Greater Vancouver from rolling over and changing our island into a bedroom community. And we're trying to figure out how we can use transition principles and so on to work with what is currently a very green municipal council on the island, but one that is facing the reality that most of the development pressure is coming from outside and is substantially beyond our control. So that's our big challenge. And I will pass it along to Cheryl.
Thank you, Dave. Cheryl from Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. We are in the very near to the Great Lakes. My intention, in 2 words, if I may, excuse me, is to continue to learn and to be inspired by what others are doing. I guess in a very short phrase, I could sum up what our transition town Peterborough project is. It's focused on economic localization. And we subsume under that a lot of activities and are facing a double-headed crisis of lack of volunteers and funding and a very, very conservative populace and municipal council. With some changes perhaps coming this fall. Thank you. And I will pass it over to Pedro.
So hello everyone, thank you Cheryl. So I'm Pedro Macedo, and I'm here in Porto, Portugal. So I'm not really English native, so I'm sorry. And I'm here more or less like a spy, since I will be facilitating the webinar in Portuguese next Wednesday. So I'm here just to see how this works and try to do even at least as good facilitating next Wednesday. Let's see. You are all invited also if you also speak in Portuguese. So my main project nowadays is my PhD in that relates with local climate action, and inside the PhD the main project is the MIT. So I'm helping in doing the research in this project. Yeah, so it's mainly that. So I will pass it to Tommy.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Pedro. I'm Tommaso, originally Italian, but living in Spain in a town close to the city of Valencia. So my intention here, I'm really enthusiastic of this community of practice and curious at the same time. So I'm really, I don't know, I'm just happy to be part of this. And my main project is basically I'm part of the core team of this Municipality in Transition project. And basically I'm focusing more on the database part that you probably see soon. Yeah. And I'll pass to Fiona.
To whom you pass it?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I think you said Fiona, did you? Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, I'm Fiona. I'm here in Totnes in Devon. And my intention of joining this is to kind of connect back in with transition, with the Transition Network. I previously worked for the Transition Network for quite a few years and Transition Town Totnes, and I've been doing this local project now, which is called Caring Town, which is about health and care and involves much more a network of local organisations, including public sector, which I guess we're going to come on and talk more about. So, but it feels really important to kind of connect this local work back in and see what we can learn from other work that's going on and to share anything that we feel is helpful here. And I apologise because I have to leave at 10 to 5 UK time, so I can't make the full 2 hours. Sorry about that, but I'll catch up after with what's happened and what I've missed. But lovely to meet you all. And I'll pass to Angela.
Angela, are you there? But I know you are there because you wrote on the chat, and you shared that you don't have camera. That's fine. But can you? Yeah, we hear you. We're here too. Well, if not, maybe you can write also on. If you can, I mean, you share that you can hear us, but right now we can't hear you. So maybe if you want to write something on the chat, we all can read it there. It's not the best, but it's a way of participating too.
She's put on the chat, apparently you can't hear me, I'll fix this and I'll come back.
Okay.
So maybe we should move to Gilles.
Okay, so Gilles? Are you there, Gilles? Angela and Gilles, it seems they disappeared, but we know they are there. So I think the best we can do for the moment is to continue. But please, Angela and Gilles, you can write on the chat, and if you're back, and we can find the moment for you to share. And Angela says, sorry, I have to go outside and fetch a computer. Okay. This is part of the technical issues we can have. But at the same time, it's wonderful that we can see that we are here right now, people from all over the world. Well, from many places. So let's continue. Thank you so much for this first sharing, for this first check-in. I think it's a good way to start getting to know each other, to connect with the others, and I think right now is a good moment also for us to share briefly a little bit about the Municipalities in Transition project. A little bit more about where we are at, what are we doing, why this community of practice, a little bit of the story of this project. And Nicola has prepared a short presentation for that. So I think it's time for you, Nicola.
Yes, I'm going to talk to you with pictures. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can see that. Let's hope that this works. Golly.
Yeah, by the way, I see that almost everyone turns off the mic. But if you're not used to that, please turn off your mic when you don't speak, because maybe there's no sound that interfere. Cheryl, thank you so much.
Oh.
Nicola.
Okay. I think I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, we can perfectly see.
It's like magic. So the story of the Municipalities in Transition project, it's a partnership project of the Transition Hubs and Transition Network. Transition Network and the Hubs collaborated together to jointly design a funding proposal to KR Foundation. And this was one of the ideas that was prioritised in that collaborative design. And we saw this idea that innovative collaboration between community groups, civil society and local government could be a leverage point for systemic change. It could hopefully encourage change on a more impactful scale and combine that community engagement of bottom-up work with the kind of reach and resources of the top-down approach. So that's the idea. So by May 2017, we'd assembled a cheerful team. So here you can see on the left, Ana Huertas is the project manager. She's from the Spanish Transition Hub. Across the back, there's Juan, you've met today, and Tommy, you've met today, and Cristiano Bertoni from the Italian Hub. And during 2017, the project team also included Josué Dezoulier from the Belgian Hub. And also in the front of this picture is Pedro Macedo, who you've also met today, our official researcher, jointly supervised by the University of Lisbon and the Drift Institute for Transitions in the Netherlands. So we're honoured to have you on the team, Pedro. As you probably know, one of the first things the Municipalities in Transition project did was to call for case studies from around the world of where these kind of interesting and impactful collaborations were already happening. So we collected 71 case studies in autumn 2017 from all those places. And they're all on the Municipalities in Transition website, which you may just about be able to see the address of that across the top. That's just a flavour of 9 of those 71 case studies, so why not go and have a look around? Some really amazing work that's going on around the world. So there's many different aspects to the Municipalities in Transition project. As we said, in the first phase, we collected these case studies. In phase 2, 8 of those case studies were researched more deeply to help design a draft framework for how civil society as municipalities could progress systemic change. And in phase 3, the project will be harvesting more information from some of those case studies to create tools in the database of options. That's obviously Tommy's main work at the moment. We selected 6 pilots in 5 countries to test this draft framework. So there's communities from Portugal, Spain, Italy, Hungary and Brazil. And this picture shows, this was a training event that we held in March 2018. So each pilot sent representatives from the municipality, so either elected politicians or local government officers, and also representatives from the community groups in that place. So what are these pilots doing? So they're testing this very flexible framework. It's very much an experiment at the moment. It's very much a draft at this stage. But the pilots are being asked to, first of all, agree the governance for this collaboration. So how will this collaboration of community groups and municipalities actually make decisions together? And then secondly, to create a baseline, evaluate what is going on already, then to identify some leverage points and 1 or 2 new actions to start during this kind of projects phase. Fourthly, actually start those actions, and fifthly, at the end of this phase, there'll be an evaluation. So the framework, the mysterious framework, it gives a structure for that baseline and evaluation, and it will also include this database of useful tools that you can use for different options in your community. And finally, a really key aspect of the Municipalities in Transition project is the communities of practice. So basically, we believe there's lots of valuable experience around the world, people who are doing really interesting experimental work, possibly in isolation. So the whole idea is to share knowledge and also to share support and inspiration for each other. So there's a reminder on this slide that we already shared kind of what we currently know about the Municipalities in Transition community to practice. There's 3 co-guardians, which is Juan, myself, and Luis, who is from the Teleres pilot in Lisbon, but he wasn't able to be with us today. And it's communities plural, communities of practice, because we saw a need for a smaller pilots community of practice to discuss some of those particular tasks they're doing in that pilot work, as well as a wider community of practice. Today is essentially the very first step in that wider community of practice, to meet some of you and start the conversations about what's going on and how we do this. And it's also a conversation that's going to be started in 3 languages, with also Spanish and Portuguese conversations happening this week, mainly because, you know, we've often heard, particularly from South America, this message of, well, if you hold this in English, we can't take part. So there was an option for some of those conversations to take place not in the English language. So I think for my very brief summary, that's it.
Wow, thank you so much, Nicola. It was very concise, to the point. And I think now is good also because there's many people that is taking part of the project here also in this conversation. If we, Pedro, Tommy, myself, we want to complement briefly what Nicola explained, that's also a good moment. And of course, later, if after these comments, any question that you have, any clarification thing, whatever, that's super welcome. So don't be shy, just jump.
So I will just add, I'm not really sure if Nicola mentioned that we hope that the project it keeps alive in the future. So the pilots will be doing these let's say tests until the end of the year. So in the beginning of next year, we'll have hopefully some learnings to share, and then probably more rounds of pilots and more communities using the framework. Yeah, so it's not totally closed. In fact, we are having a meeting all together this week to start working or to do more work in the future of the project. But we hopefully will make it grow in the future.
Thank you, Pedro.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. Right now we are starting to the strategy in the future, and we see many different possibilities. Unfortunately, we weren't able to work with more pilots, but already 6 pilots is a super succeed, because at the beginning we were thinking only 3, because our capacity is not much, you know. And finally, we decided to work with 6 different pilots. So there's, I know, Fiona, for example, that one of the math cases was presented by you, for example. Who's typing? Maybe Angela? Yeah, Angela, you can put your mic off. Thank you so much. Well, so I remember that, for example, one of the cases that we received, it was from Tognes, and it was a very, very interesting case. Like many others, all the 71 cases were super interesting, but unfortunately, we weren't able, to research deeply with all of them. And by building together this collaborative community of practice, what we want indeed is not to lose all this connection, but to be all together and to learn from each other. This first version, this first draft of this methodology, of this framework that we're experimenting in these 6 pilots is an experiment. And with all the information we are researching in each pilot, we will be developing a second version of this framework that ideally we will be able to apply in other different places. And also we're thinking about how this community of practice can evolve, can ideally become self-sufficient and autonomous in a way. And it's not just about the Municipalities in Transition project, but it's about how we all together, the people that we are here and the people that we aren't here, how all can learn together about how municipalities and civil society can collaborate together to build sustainable communities and resilient communities. So this is in a way what we want to do with this community of practice, that ideally it will be all of us, the ones that we will be saying, look, so right now I'm interested in exploring this subject, or we would like to invite this person, or we will see all that. So this is like the first contact. And yeah, but we are thinking a lot into how this project can continue in the future, which is a challenge, but yeah. Questions or other comments?
Yes, does anybody have any questions?
Probably Tom.
Yeah, I'd like to ask your, 2 questions really. If you could give more details on how you chose the 6 pilots, so why those 6, and your continuation plan in terms of what you can do within the scope of the project and your current funding, and what you'd like to be able to do in the future, how you'll ensure any continuity, and if that's all the funding that's available, or what further on, if resources allow.
Thank you, Tom. So, well, I'm gonna try to answer, and please, Pedro, for example, you can support me with the answers about why we chose anyone that knows the project and knows the answers can support me. So about why we chose these pilots, it was a quite tricky decision and not easy, but we had different criteria, and basically we did an evaluation of all the cases, and each case had a number, like a quantitative evaluation of that, based on diversity, based on the capacity of that pilot to really, in the timing that we needed the project to be developed, taking into account that working with public administration, it takes quite a long time. So if they had the capacity to really do the work, of course, the potential of continuity in the place, the interest they show, if there were already like good collaboration among the different actors in the place or not. Basically, these were the criteria. And also because of question of capacity of the MIT project of funding, we weren't able to have many projects very far away from Europe because all the core team was in Europe. So because the funding is a bit, I mean, it's limited. All of them, apart from one in Brazil, are in Europe. So that was, you know, part of the limitations we had. But if you see, for example, we have the case of Lisbon is a neighborhood in Lisbon in Portugal. Then the case in Spain is a consortium of small municipalities, so it's not just one municipality. This brings a little bit of complexity, but it's also a very interesting case. We have two cases in Italy that both of them are in small towns. Case in Hungary is part of is a neighborhood in Budapest, so it's also part of big city. And the case in Brazil is a part of a neighborhood in Sao Paulo. So we have, you know, small municipalities, part of neighborhoods in big cities, different contexts, different languages, different realities, and within our capacities, it was I think the choice we had. But there were very interesting cases in England, in Belgium, in Denmark, well, in the US, in many places. I don't know, Pedro, if you want to complement more or less. It was very interesting and very hard to make that decision. Because at the end, you are based on the information that you have, but there's many information that you don't have. Yeah. And regarding the second question about the continuity and which our plan with the current funding, well, there's many questions we don't have about the future because we are right now looking for funding for the future. The project ends, this part of the project with the current funding will normally end in February, March, more or less. And well, we are going to finish the project with the 6 pilots, and we are going to improve the first version of the framework with all the information we have. We are right now researching and experimenting in each pilot. At the same time, we are creating this community of practice that it started before, as Nicola explained, with the pilots. It's like the first layer of the onion of this community of practice are the pilots, because they are the ones that they are right now more working on the ground. And this started in March in Italy with the first international training that we made. But right now we are launching this other layer of the community of practice. So ideally, this community of practice that it starts right now, it will continue not only until March, but it will continue more than that. And it's also a very good way to communicate what is happening within the project, to show to other people around the world what is happening within the project, and hopefully to support the project too. And yeah, and about the future, well, Pedro already share that we will meet right now, for example, in Firenze, in Italy, in a specific meeting about strategy. This is a strategic project for Transition Network too. We're talking with different funders. This is a project that is very interesting also for Ecolise and its members. We are receiving contacts from different people around the world that is interested into that. It's like if still we aren't opening everything that we are researching or working with, because it's still like a baby, but the potential is huge, and it's part of the process in where we are, but about how we can train facilitators internationally around how to build this collaboration, how to apply this framework in different pilots around the world, and many other things are part of this future strategy, or what we would like to see in the future. And Nicola?
So Fiona has to go. I thought it was an hour's time you had to go, not now. But so sorry, Fiona, but wants to say something about
Please,
her project before she goes.
Yeah, is that all right, Juan? Because sorry, I've got another appointment that I couldn't move, so I have to go at 10 to 5 so I can get there. But if it's helpful just to say a little bit about the project here, just before I go, for what, 5 minutes or so? Is that good?
Okay.
And really happy to talk more with anybody at any time about any of the useful bits. But as I mentioned earlier, the project we're doing is around health and care. And the question that we're really trying to address, I think that you're most interested in, is first of all to be clear about, well, what does a happy, healthy community look like? So in transition, we're very used to talking about resilience, and for us then we're looking at this from the angle of health and care and support and personal resilience and personal health. And so what does it look like? And then what are the respective responsibilities of all of the players in the local system in putting in place the foundations that support a happy and healthy community? So we know that includes some of the health and care services, but it also includes the built infrastructure, the facilities that are available, both for clinical services but also community services, and also the space, the land, the open space that we require as well. So recognizing that we need all of these things to be in place, as well as the related food growing locally, the energy production, the good housing, the education, the whole system that we're really trying to look at in transition. So that's one of the questions that we're trying to answer. And for me, this question of municipalities, or the public sector, as we talk about it in the UK, is including them as part of those discussions, but not have them drive those discussions or convene them, which whenever they do that, it tends to, for all sorts of reasons, never really go anywhere. So what we're trying to do is to do a community-led, community-supported shift in how our health and social care is provided. Not the clinical stuff. We're not saying the community is going to take on clinical roles necessarily, but those things about what the community can do and possibly should do given the state of the finances in our public sector. So those are the questions that we're exploring. And what we've got is a network. That was the first thing that was formed, is a network. We've got about 80 local organizations who are in some way, and groups, voluntary groups, community groups. It includes the public sector, so that's our town council, our district council, and our county council are involved to some degree or other, it has to be said. That's one of the challenges, is who's the right person to get involved in something like this. And we also have, for us, the NHS bodies, so the bodies that buy in the health services for our National Health Service. they're the ones with the money and the power to make the decisions about who they buy the services from. So we have to engage with them and we have to include them. And again, we are with some degree of success. You know, there's more work to do there. And so I think that's probably the bit that's of most interest to this group, is how we are succeeding or failing in building those relationships. And it works at different levels. The closer we are to it, like the town council, great. You know, they're funding one of our new services. We've got a good working relationship with them. But some of these clinical commissioning bodies that buy in the services, it's more of a challenge. And the way I describe it is, it feels like I've got this socket, you know, like an electrical plug, that has got all this power behind it, all this power of what we can do in the community, and I'm trying to plug it in to some of these bodies, and I just can't find the right socket. You know, there's a bit of interest here, and then they go away, and there's a bit there, and you know, and they don't seem to have that socket or that capacity to connect in and to engage with us. And so it feels like that's that's the challenge for us. We get lots of positive, yeah, great, this is exactly what we need to do, but it's hard to get beyond that at the moment. But just with the great things that happen in transition, with a great stroke of luck, the outgoing head of this big clinical commissioning group who buys in all the services has just become a trustee of Transition Town Totnes, which is just great. You know, one of those things that just happen magically. And so he's going to be able to give us a lot of, you know, access and understanding, I think, from the other side about how we can connect in. And that feels so important, because there is a big culture clash between what we're trying to do at community level and these professional public sector bodies. And that is one of the biggest barriers. You know, the culture clash, the lack of socket, the busyness they have, they're always reorganizing, they're under enormous pressure. So yeah, we've got quite a few challenges, but hopefully we've got some help coming in from various places. And yeah, so I'll stop talking about that. But I could say a lot more. It's very interesting and challenging work, as I'm sure you're all finding in your places too.
Thank you so much for sharing, Fiona.
Pleasure.
Indeed. After we will ask if we want to do a short break, and after this short break, we will dedicate some time specifically to tell more, to share more about projects. But unfortunately, you have to go. But it was great you were able to.
I'm sorry. Well, I know this is being recorded, so I'll come back and I'll watch the input from the others when you share that, so I don't miss out on anything. And any bright ideas to help us, I would be very welcome. I'd love those. Thank you.
You're welcome.
See you again.
See you again. Bye, Fiona. Well, any other question, comment? As I've said, we will have some time to share more about our projects. But regarding the municipalities in transition, there's any other question, or maybe they come later, but right now. Okay, so I think it's fine. So Nicola, what do you think?
Let's have a 5-minute break, because it's always tiring having an online meeting. I think it's always good for a break. So if we have a 5-minute break and then come back.
Yeah, let's make a 5 minutes break. Like this, we can stand up, move a little bit, drink something, and let's meet here. Yeah, let's meet here. Yeah, we can do it at in 5 minutes. It's fine. Okay. In the middle.
Okay. I apologize, everyone. I thought I got it right. Darn it. So I'm from the US. We have an office in Northern California, and it's Transition US. We're starting to work with our state water agency. And also in this part of the world, the Global Climate Action Summit will be in San Francisco in September. And it's international. It's not like the Paris, you know, the last summit, but it's sort of an in-between summit. And I expect there will be a lot of representatives from all over the world. So we're thinking of what we'll do. Ideas appreciated. We have been asked by the water agency to maybe spearhead a global water challenge, but I'm not sure we have the capacity. But yeah, that's it for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I mean, don't worry, this is just the first webinar. And I know that there's people that they are interested in being here, but unfortunately they couldn't. And you just arrived when when it was fine for you. So that's great. But basically we are in the middle. We presented all of us. We talked briefly about the Municipalities in Transition project. We discussed about a few questions. And right now we are more in a moment of starting to share stories of collaboration. Stories of collaboration in our own projects among different actors. And the idea is that whoever wants to share one story about your project, trying to see these challenges, these successes, these key points about how to make this collaboration possible. So you can just jump. We can have like few minutes for maybe like 3, maximum 4 minutes for each story. And later we will have some time to discuss once we have heard about these different stories, because maybe we will be able to identify shared challenges, shared patterns, shared questions, whatever, we will see. So more or less for the next half an hour, we will be talking about that. So, and Fiona indeed was the first one before the break. She just started with her own project. Who would like to share something? Maybe Dave or Cheryl, or even you, Caroline, that you just jumped here, whoever. Go, Cheryl.
I think you're still muted.
Got it. Thank you. Our transition town, Peterborough, is trying very hard to create collaboration with our public sector, in this case at the municipal level. And our municipality has something called a Sustainable Peterborough Community Plan. And it was put together with a big amount of funding about 4 years ago and remains essentially an aspirational document. It has no real authority. It has no money to give. It lays out a pretty standard format of goals and objectives without a lot of measurement. For instance, one goal is that our area, the Peterborough area, city and county surrounding rural area, will feed itself by 2036. I see Nicola smiling. And it covers just about every sector of civic life, so it's a pretty big document. And it started a committee, a coordinating committee, upon which Transition Town had a representative, myself, for a number of years. I have moved down a notch to one of the working groups on food and farming, and another Transition Town member has stepped into the place on the large coordinating committee, which is essentially a municipal committee So those of you who understood Nicola's remarks about the difficulties of working with government will understand how frustrating it is for a grassroots organization like Transition Town to be sitting at that table. So we pay attention to them. We try to use their language in some of our communication and our thinking. We have a magazine that we put out quarterly called The Green Zine. And as one of the editors of that, I try to reflect some of our municipal goals in our writing. But our biggest challenge, or one of our biggest challenges, is that that group is still operating within the prevailing economic model of endless growth and competition. And so it gets very, very frustrating. We then do other things like recently there's a municipal election coming up in the fall, and we hosted as part of a collaboration of community groups an all candidates meeting for candidates around the theme of climate change, which seems to be not in anybody's radar. So that's a very brief way of explaining some of the things we do municipally and how we go about trying to form those collaborations. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chair. Who would like to continue?
Well, I just loved the way, I just wanted to say, I love the way you say the challenge of operating in this economic model of growth. It's just something I've heard before, and it's such a massive thing to say as well. It's just such a massive challenge that to work within that existing mindset. So yeah, just wanted to honour that. I've heard it before, and it's also a massive challenge. And I just wanted to also say, we had thought that we would do this in small groups, but actually it feels like we all want to hear what everyone has to say. So that's one of the reasons we're not doing it in a small group.
Can I throw out something here?
Go ahead.
Well, I think it's interesting that Cheryl is speaking from Ontario. Ontario has just elected a great misfortune, a premier who is a climate change denier, kind of Trump Jr. I used to live in Ontario, so I sympathize, but this is kind of a challenge that I think we are all facing, is the fact that elected politicians come and go, and you just start to get used to working with one group, and all of a sudden an election comes along and you're dealing with a completely different group with a totally different worldview, and you have to start all over again. And I think one of the things that I am hoping will come out of this process that you're working on is some patterns of how to deal with these discontinuities, of how to bring people up to speed when you've been humming along and you're going along just fine, and then all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of new people that you have to educate about this process. So that's one of the challenges in any kind of group process, but I think it will be particularly a challenge for municipalities in transition, because transitioners, we tend to hang around for a long time. Most of the people that I have met in the transition network in North America, and also when I visited England, have been, shall I say, been on the planet for quite a while. A lot older than most of the faces that I see on this in this meeting. Whereas the municipal councillors, although they tend to be older, they're here for a short time. They're focused on particular projects. And I don't know how you're going to deal with that, but it seems to me that one of your greatest challenges is going to be that process of dealing with the discontinuities and the turnover of elected officials. So that's all I had to throw in. We're dealing with the same thing. We have an election here on Bowen Island. We had a quite green council that is currently in power, but there is a group on island who want to throw them all out and replace them with a more development-friendly group. And so we may be facing the same thing in the fall. And it's part of the job that we're going to have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. You're right that that's one of the main challenges, definitely. Who would like to continue?
And Angela might want a chance to say something, as she has been unable to so far.
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw Caroline's hand up too.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, fine. Sorry for the difficulty of connecting. I wasn't sure I would be able to be here. That's why I didn't enroll. And it's really important to be here, and it's really very, very special to listen to all of you. And I'm going to talk in more detail with Pedro Macedo and Luís about the Portuguese situation. But it's interesting that we are we represent a kind of a broad connection between different areas. So there's the Telheiras core group, and myself as international. I'm responsible for the connection between Transition Portugal and the Transition Network International. So it's interesting to find the different roles and how we can help each other to do a better job. And regarding my own interests, maybe my deepest interests are mentality change, or the how actually we are able to change behavior, not just consumption behavior, but our deep understanding of life, of existence, of it's not the meaning of life in philosophical terms, but in very, very practical terms. And for me personally, that's what I seek, and that's what I find in Transition Network, both in Portugal and in this kind of meetings. I feel that I'm in contact with people who are extremely deeply connected to what they're doing, and what Dave just said earlier on, just before me, is an example of that. Because in academia, we can find people who are doing different kind of work, and then they move to another work, and they quit their kind of mind frame is left behind. So and here it's something different, so it's very, very special. And I also want to call your attention to Portugal itself. In political terms, we have a left-wing government, and it's the first time ever that we've have in 40 years after the democratic revolution, that we are able to have 3 different left-wing parties in government together. So it's really, really special. But the negative aspect is that in development terms, in development, not in real estate terms, in economic development terms, it's extremely how can I say, old-fashioned, conventional, and so it's really, really difficult for people in Transition Portugal to actually find a kind of a language and a kind of a strategy to deal with the current situation, because nothing is what it seems. So it's and it's not because people are liars, it's just a kind of misunderstanding or mismatch between what we're really talking about. Because everyone wants good principles, but when you look at political actions, they're extremely ambiguous and extremely perverse, I think it's the word. Well, this is a long conversation, and I don't want to take too long, but I'm deeply committed, and I feel very humbled to be here, and I'm I love the way everyone says, I'm here to learn, to be inspired. And I said, well, that's exactly the kind of people I want to hear. That's the kind of, it's like a code, a common code. So thank you. And I'll be in touch with Pedro and Luis. So it's good to know that we work in small cells so that we can connect one another in a straightforward manner. So thank you for listening to me, and I'll keep listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for sharing, Angela. So I think Caroline also wanted to say something. So please, Caroline.
Yeah, again, sorry, I've missed the earlier part. One of the, I think in the US, and I don't know about in other countries, but our governments are sort of farther away from the people. And I know when I visited places in Europe, it seems like governments are more of the people or closer or accessible. One of the things that we've done is to partner with another nonprofit ally who had made inroads and connections with the local government and the state government. And it was through us being in partnership that we're able now to have our own or build our own relationship with the state government. So using another nonprofit as a bridge was very successful for us. So I just wanted to mention that for the countries where government is a little harder to reach. And just along those lines, we'll be adapting transition streets and only using the Get Started chapter and the Next Steps chapter and turning the what's currently a single water chapter into two parts, indoor household use and outdoor household use, and expanding those. And so it's a simpler project, but more robust on water. And because California is in a drought and has been for a lot of years, that's the chapter that has the main interest for the water agency and some other water providers. So that's where we're starting. And we sent them also our Transition Streets volume of all of the chapters, energy, waste, transportation, and food, and water. And they thought, oh, that looks interesting too. So again, having an ally to make the bridge, working on just water, and then I think the door is open for more opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Go ahead, Nicola.
I just wanted to respond to what Dave was saying about the elected politicians coming and going, and then you have to start all over. And can this project help with this? And well, who knows? But one of the pilots, the Valsamoggia pilot in Italy, is in effect it's wrestling with that problem, because at the heart of that area is a place called Montevideo, which had a transition initiative from very early days, which did some really great work with their local authority and got a great partnership going. And now what's happened, as you say, with changes, they've sort of amalgamated all those local authorities together. So the Montevideo municipality is now part of this much larger conglomeration of councils called Valsamoggia. So they're in effect working with 4 or 5 other councils that weren't involved. So there's part of it that's well versed in transition and most of it that isn't. And so they are having to sort of start again as you say, with kind of a new set of officials. And I just found that really interesting when I met Federica, who's one of the local government officials there. She was in the Montevideo local government a few years ago, and when the transition group was starting, and she was saying you could really smell the change in the air, and now she's seeing that sort of step backwards, and we have to convince everybody all over again, and we have to introduce these ideas to everybody all over again. And that's the work that this pilot, they're doing in their pilot, is using this framework to introduce those ideas all over again and get people involved all over again. So it will be interesting to see if that particular pilot has any learnings for how do you deal with it when suddenly the administration all changes. It's all a different pattern. They've set it all up again and elected different people.
Mm-hmm. Pedro.
I really enjoyed the Fiona's metaphor of the sockets, and this image of transition initiative trying to plug into the local government and not finding the right socket. I would say that of course we are not creating any kind of miracle in this in this project, and there is a lot of barriers like the discontinuity that Dave was mentioning, and that I also think that this discontinuity also happens a lot unfortunately in the civil society initiatives, also in transition. Maybe there are a few of people in transition that are really resilient and that are there for many years, but maybe many people also come and go very frequently. But as I was saying, I think that I was thinking like with this image of the socket in my head, and I think we are not really creating any kind of or trying to look for the socket. We are trying to create some kind of a very simple machine for transition that both community led initiatives and local governments can both plug in and work together in like I was saying, with a very, let's say, neutral and simple machine, in the sense that it doesn't have many it's not like a big compromise, or there is not any requirements, for instance, to use with the machine. So it's some kind of very simple methodology that can both have like with a lot of different kinds of sockets that both politicians and transitioners and other activists can plug in somehow. I think that's the thing that we are trying to do using this metaphor. I don't know. What do you think, Juan or Tommy?
Tommy, please go ahead. I've talked too much. I think it's your turn.
I think, well, I'm quite new in this project. So I came in, I can talk about my own experience in the project. I arrived when the project was already started. So I love the idea of creating this kind of, it's well, we call them machine, but it's more like, I'd say like a methodology somehow, and to try to create something that moves by itself. So when I arrived to this project, I came to New Transition quite lately compared to the others. So when I've seen so many initiatives already going on, both by the website and by direct knowing the project of Talleres, because I'm the tutor of Talleres. So I came to have more and more hope, of this. But at the same time, I realized how this problem with this continuity, as everybody is talking about here, can have some effect and some impact in the whole big amount of work that's been done and is going on. So it's somehow frustrating. Honestly, I start to gain hope with the transition movement and with this project since I'm in, and the more I become aware of the initiative and all the processes that are going on, I have more and more hope. So that's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Well, just to add something else, I think one of the important things of this project, for example, is that by working with different pilots and by mapping cases where this kind of collaboration is happening, we're making visible that this kind of project, this kind of collaboration exists. And when you work at the municipal level, the public administration, it's difficult for them to be pioneers. And they always want to look that something similar is already happening somewhere. And then they feel, like safer, like calmer, like, okay, so then this is happening somewhere else. There's this municipality that is, whatever, promoting urban gardens or this local currency, or, there's thousands of different projects they can do. But by making that visible, and also by creating spaces where both civil society organizations, but also citizens and people that is working within the public administration, but at the end that they are also citizens, putting all these people together and creating space where they can collaborate and share different challenges and insights, and how with different lenses and with different realities, that in the same context, how they can together start to build bridges. I think this is very, very powerful. It's happening. We are not reinventing the wheel, but by creating this methodology that we know that we haven't explained you much yet about that, but this methodology in few sentences, for the moment, is based on, there's one grid that has different actors and different actions, and we can use to evaluate how is the situation of the collaborations in different sectors within a town or a neighborhood or a city. There's few of these sections of the grid that we have identified that they are leverage points. They are more powerful to promote systemic change in the community. So by mapping the different actions that are happening in one town, we can see which kind of actors they are more active, what actors aren't involved into systemic change into the place, and so on. So this is like the first part. And then we're building a database based on this grid also, with all these different cells. And we're just mapping different tools. Most of them, many of them we already know, but also many of them are being included into the database by this first research we did with the 71 cases. And the idea is that once you arrive to your place, you put different people in the same room, for example, from civil society, from the public administrations, and all together using the grid, you can analyze what's the situation of your place. And then with this first assessment, you can go to the database and look, okay, so what kind of tools can we use for these different situations? So this is like in a very, very simple way, okay? And it's very interesting because in each pilot, because all of them are very different, they are including ideas and how we could map also the potential of the different actions, or how could we map this or that? And this is the moment where we are right now. And personally, I think this is very challenging, but very exciting. So, and this is also very connected with resilience indicators that I know, Caroline, you have been working with that in the US. This is something we were thinking about how to include it into the methodology. Still, we don't know exactly how, but all these kind of things are part of it. And just to give an example, in La Garrocha, which is the case in the north of Spain, and I'm the tutor of that case, in only the 19th of June, we will have a one-day training with people, with more than 30 people that work in different municipalities of the region. And that training is going to be about the municipalities in transition, about the framework, about resilience, and it's kind of building a new culture around all these ideas, you know, building a language about that. And we don't really know exactly where are we going for, but this is part of the experiment, I guess. Just to bring some insights from my side. I see that it's already a little bit more than 6:30 in Central European time, so we have a little bit less than half an hour. I don't know if I don't know, someone else would like to add something about this conversation about the challenges, or maybe somebody would like to summarize a little bit which were the key challenges and also key factors that we have identified. And also, Tom, that you were there listening, and we can see you, but we know that you are there if you want to complement. Dave.
Yeah, just a couple of suggestions, things that we're looking to do to deal with the discontinuity specifically that you might consider for your database. The first one of these is a visioning exercise. The advantage of visioning is that it avoids the appearance of taking a particular political stance. So the idea of, particularly if you've got new counselors who are not quite up to speed, the idea of doing a community visioning exercise where you kind of say, what would we like our community to look like 20 years or 30 years into the future? It's a kind of a useful way for getting a consensus about what are the goals that you're aiming for. And sometimes it's easier to look at shared goals and then start to deal with the more difficult question of how do you get there. So I would recommend that. We've done that in past, and I think we're going to propose it again after the election this fall, is to sponsor a community visioning exercise around what we would like our community to look like 20 years in the future. And the other one may not apply to you in Europe. I don't know if you have something equivalent to what we have in Canada, which is called an official community plan. And the official community plan is kind of something that is used to bridge between different councils. So it's usually updated about every 10 years or so. And all new legislation and proposals are measured against this official community plan. Now, ours is coming up for renewal within the next year. So our plan is to be a partner with the municipality on the revision of the official community plan and to bring to bear the transition principles as a guiding document that can be used in the next draft of the official community plan. So those are my two suggestions for things that might help.
Thank you so much, Dave. Sharon.
I'll just leap right on that, Dave, because there are some similarities here, and they might have lessons for everyone else on this group. Two things. That visioning that you spoke of was what we did, or what the community did. Transition Town did not lead it or convene it, but we participated in that sustainable Peterborough aspirational plan that I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation. And it has remained aspirational. What I have to, full disclosure here, I was a municipal employee. So I understand what goes on inside of a city hall. I have also worked at the other two levels of government, so I hope I bring some of that understanding to my local grassroots transition group, which is another challenge, because people who have not worked in government either A, don't want to deal with government, and we really believe that engaging our municipality is important, or that's all they want to do. So you lose the grassroots thing. And I try to walk the balance there. But that sustainable vision is not used by our municipality as a lens through which to make its decisions about anything in our community. Secondly, that official community plan, our municipality is deeply engaged in revising our official plan. It was 20 years overdue. Another group that I am involved in, representing the transition point of view, has moved that process to an entirely new level of participation with the citizens of our community. For instance, we just finished a 4-day design charrette all day with invited people in the community, architects, lawyers, people with ideas, and then opened those 4 evenings to the general public for input onto the plan. I wasn't part of the invited 4 days, but I went twice in the evening, and nowhere in this huge room full of maps and designs and stickies and, you know, the usual thing you do when you're changing a plan, was there even a whiff of a mention of anything to do with climate change. So on the last night, I was representing the transition perspective and brought that up. And also we were invited in preparation for the all candidates municipal meeting, municipal candidates, to submit questions that we should ask them in a World Cafe. And again, our questions were the only ones having to do with the future of the planet and what can be done locally. So there were questions like, what do you think it will take the city to be ready for climate-related crisis in our food supply or adverse effects on our water supply? If you agree that climate change is a real threat to our community, what is the one big or first thing that you would push for action on? And can you please use the lens of your own sustainable Peterborough report when your staff are writing reports for policy decisions? So those are just some quick examples of what's happening in our municipality and how frustrating it is to get the transition viewpoint and actions to be taken seriously. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. So before closing this part and going to the last part of this first webinar, the community of practice, I don't know if there's any last comment or suggestion, idea, something regarding this last conversation we are having about the challenges on the collaborations. I don't know if maybe Tom, that you were that you didn't share anything, you would like to add something, or I don't know.
Yeah, well, a couple of observations, I suppose. One at municipal level, and reflecting on a common theme that arises from most, perhaps all of the stories, and also something I'm reminded in from the wonderful contribution that you made, Cheryl, to that, our book on community resilience a couple of years ago that Juan also contributed the study to, about the this stepping into a different world that arises when you seek to engage with the corridors of power, and that reflecting the deep cultural division and cultural divide, which I think is evident. It's explicit or below the surface in a lot of the stories people have shared here, and that's a common theme I see in the documentation and reports from attempts to engage at municipal level. First of all, the fact that sustainability, climate, and lots of the issues that transition groups prioritise and that provide the framing context for our work aren't that for municipalities or for established organisations. They're peripheral standalone issues that have to be accommodated into a framework which, as several people pointed out, is still based on a mentality of growth, of competition, that is structures the institutions and the experiences of people within them in very specific ways. And another aspect of that cultural difference is in seeking to create microcosms of a post-carbon culture, a life-centered culture, then transition groups and similar groups have come up with very different methodologies, very different social approaches, which are much more affirmative, they're much more life-enhancing, and there's it's probably familiar to anybody who has a foot in both, are just much more pleasant to be in. And I find two key observation that's been made in the literature recently about exactly this is a phenomenon called coercive isomorphism, which means that the need to engage with the existing institutions creates a pressure to fit a certain shape, either because that's the only type of organisation they'll recognise or be able to deal with, or that's the only way to achieve any power for spreading one's message or to affect change. And the shapes that need to be adopted to be effective in that way are very different from the shapes that arise when people self-organise around principles of sharing and of caring and of mutual support and generosity, the types of core values that tend to predominate. The other is the contradictions in these organisations, the internal contradictions, and that big one again, if any organisation that's serious about sustainability, about caring for people, can no longer be committed to growth as a guiding principle, and that cannot really deliver those effectively within very rigid hierarchical structures, again, as various people have pointed out. At the same time, the people working within these organisations, they're all people who are seeking to express their own humanity, often in very dehumanising contexts, and often just respond so positively to the opportunities to do something different and to work differently. A lot of my work is bridging transition and academic researchers who spend most of their time in universities, and it's such a joy for them to step out of their everyday institutional environment into the type of environment we create when we organise events. And you may well remember, Nicola, from many of the events we organised and held together. It was a few years ago now. So that contradiction gives a really, for me, it's a really powerful basis for change. But in within Echolesa, we're really seeking to work with at a higher level. And yeah, the EU is and the EC are the specific focuses for which of our policy and advocacy work, and my colleagues who focus in that area, and what we try to support in terms of the information we deliver and provide them, really seeking to leverage that contradiction again between what the institutions demand and how they operate, and what they say they want to achieve, and what people working within them with good intentions would really like to see happen. So yeah, it's great to hear so many perspectives on this and ideas, and really in the strongest, the most powerful way to learn to overcome these seemingly intractable problems, at least these very enormous problems, is in my experience this coming together, this shared experiences, this sharing stories, and empowering and inspiring ourselves and each other to take that out. So it's great to see this community of practice arising to do this, and this project to support this, and can see lots of synergies between that and the systems for collaborative knowledge generation and sharing that we're developing within Echolesa at the moment, which will be all fully available to this community to make use of and share and help us co-create, if that's helpful to your work.
Thank you so much, Tom. Wow, so I think with this last intervention from Tom, we go to the last bit. I think it was a very good way to close all this sharing. And right now, initially we were thinking in having a little bit more time for this bit, but it's fine. What we want is in the next, maybe it's going to be short, but in the next 5 minutes, more or less, 5-10 minutes, in a what we call popcorn style. This means that whoever wants to share something, we don't do a proper circle. We don't need to talk, all of us, but whoever wants to share. The idea is to hear from you, what do you expect from this community of practice? So the key question is, what will make this community of practice work for you? So if you would be able just to share, I mean, something, because we have not much time, but few key ideas, few words. We're taking into account that we are recording the conversation, and that we are also, right now, Nicola, I think, is also taking few notes of that, and these will support us. In a way, it's a kind of an evaluation of the work we are doing, and it supports us in the co-creation of all together on and which can be our next steps. So yeah, what can make this community of practice work for you? I know I'm changing absolutely the subject right now, but I think it's important because in a way we are co-creating it. So go ahead, Dave.
Okay, well, I can start. I guess what I am hoping for from this group, I like the fact that you're taking a pattern language approach. I was involved in developing a pattern language for facilitation over the last few years, and I started out very skeptical about that approach, but I've really been sold on the idea of looking for the patterns, which are basically things that just work at different scales and at different contexts. So I applaud you for taking that approach. I know that your framework is looking at patterns as a method. Yes, Tom, to answer Tom's question, it's the GroupWorks pattern language, but there's also another pattern language that you might want to look at called the Wise Democracy Pattern Language. It was developed by a guy by the name of Tom Attlee. It's basically all about patterns of things that work well in dialogue and deliberation in the political arena. So it's quite applicable to the kinds of things. You might find some really interesting ideas in there. But I think what I'm looking for, the way in which we found patterns that arose was from stories. And they were primarily from success stories. There were some war stories where we basically had to turn the idea upside down and say, okay, if that was the war story, what might have been the success story had we done things differently? But what I'm looking for most from your pilots are success stories, things that have worked well in your particular context that we can port and share across and apply in others. And I think if you come up with a bunch of those, it'll be a winning project.
Thank you, Dave. More sharings about how this community can be useful for you, can be inspiring for you, and how would you like to participate into this community, of course. Nicola shared here like few questions, do you want, some of them are very concrete, do you want another meeting like this? What about the language? Taking into account that right now we are starting with this experiment of having different languages. Are there any topics, questions you want to talk about? Because this first webinar was more about connecting, about getting to know each other. Go ahead, Caroline.
Yes, I appreciate being in conversation with people and sharing some tips and tools about what works and how others overcome some of the challenges. I think that would be really helpful as we move ahead. So I just, appreciate getting support and ideas. And maybe down the road, we'll think of ways that we could collaborate more broadly, maybe Canada and the US or something. Or, just throughout different regions. That would be exciting. Or maybe there's similar projects. Like Angela pointed out that there might be interest in our water project in other drought places. So, how do we share more broadly? And I think this is a good community to do that within. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. By the way, I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the document we prepared with the summary of the information about the community of practice. When we send the invitation, we share the document. So there you can also understand a little bit more about how a community of practice works. That I think it's very useful. And we are in the beginning of building this community. This means that we need to find this continuity and meeting. And also there's people that aren't here and they will join us, of course.
Our chat column's got very lively.
Yeah, we have a lot of information.
Lots of interesting links to go and follow.
A lot of links.
Really interesting.
Yeah. But I don't know if in the recorded version of this webinar, if the chat appears. I don't
think it does, but I've copied down those interesting links.
Great. So, well, we have only 4 minutes left. I don't know if somebody else wants to add any other idea. I think, well, also Cheryl shared on the chat. And I think that basically what we want to do is like to, in a way, to build a family of people around the world that has a shared interest about how to foster transition, sustainability, and local resilience at the municipal scale. And by that, if we want to do that, we need to foster collaboration among the different actors. So it's not only about the Municipalities in Transition project. There's many other methodologies and tools that can be under that umbrella. And there's many people that potentially could be in this community, and we're just at the beginning. So in a way, if we want this to succeed, we need to go step by step, and together we will be able to make that this potential emerges, and really this to be helpful and inspiring for all of us. So yeah, I think it's time for checkout, and basically the way we want to propose the invitation is like first to have maybe only like 30 seconds to deep briefly to try to focus on all the interesting experiences we have shared. So maybe we can close our eyes for one moment. And we can try to catch that word that could define what's the main thing we take from this webinar, from this experience, from this first webinar. And when whoever wants to start, you can just share that word. So all of us, we can open our mics, and whoever wants to start. Your mic, Cheryl.
I am extraordinarily grateful for the people in the world like you who are doing the work. And I feel that Transition Town here is not alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I'm feeling honoured to have heard these interesting stories.
Hopeful.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's perfect.
Hopeful to be with helpful people. Thank you.
I love your enthusiasm, Juan. I hope it's infectious. It certainly has infected me. And it's nice to see lots of young faces on the screen here.
Thank you, Dave. I feel grateful and excited, because this is just one beginning.
So my word will be doubts. And I want to thank everyone for the doubts that, more doubts that you brought me today, because like all the wise people, I'm always full of doubts, and you brought me very interesting and good doubts today. Thank you.
I'd love to bring in the word experiences I've heard, and there are so many people that can contribute and bring in their experiences. It's very fertile environment. Thank you.
My word will be optimism. How people are seeking to face some very big challenges.
Thank you, Tom. And Angela is writing on the chat, and she said, I say bye, adeus, and writing, my buzzword is connectivity. I feel deeply connected to these deep felt goals, values, and beliefs. Thank you so much, Angela. So with this, we finish this first online meeting. But remember that for the moment, we will see if we continue with that or not. But for the moment, we opened a closed Facebook group for the community. So if we are in there, we are invited. The idea is that we all together make it more live, and you will receive also. We can share whatever we want there regarding this kind of challenges and projects and stories and the project of municipalities in transition. And we don't know exactly when, but we will propose definitely another second webinar, another second session. We don't know yet, Caroline, when it's going to be the next one, but it will be, we don't know, probably in September. I don't know if it's going to be before the summer. We'll see. But if there's suggestions about what do we want to talk in these sessions, or somebody that want to jump into the arena to co-facilitate that session and so on, super welcome. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Nicola. This has been recorded, and we will send it to all of you and to the rest of the people that received the invitation. And I think it's finished for the moment. Have a very nice day.
Thanks, Juan. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Juan and Nicola.
Bye.
Thank you, Caroline, and everyone. Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.